what you're saying to all of us here and the tribe is, look, know what you're putting in front of others. And if you're uncertain, call professional help, call an attorney and get some help. And that's what I'm hearing you share right now. That's kind of because, we know the business, but for those that may not, be in the business, we just want to be able to help them understand what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys are mentors to other people. I mean, if you can't reach an attorney, call somebody else that does it, that knows the contracts better. Know your forms. For you out there, know your forms. Know what you're putting in front of the people, and make sure it's clear to them. Because look, if they're going to make a deal with you, they're going to make a deal with you.
Yeah.
If they make a deal with you that they don't know the deal, that's when it blows up before closing, right? And everybody's got their stuff lined up. They've got workers lined up. They've got money they're going to make on the deal lined up. And then 2 days before closing,
they got their shoes picked out from the closing check. Exactly. Be buying. They got the money spent.
yeah.
And here it is. You're telling them like,
We're the ones that have to send the settlement statement out, which has the actual numbers on it, right? So you work a deal with somebody and they don't know what that looks like in numbers form. If you're not explaining that to them properly, I've had a lot of deals where everything's up to everybody's getting along. Can't wait for this to close. And we send out that settlement statement, and sure enough, the person selling that house says, "Well, what's all this?" I thought I was walking with the sales price, or you know what I mean? And
what do you mean I have to pay off my mortgage?
yeah, exactly. It's just, it's wild, but I think I don't know. I wasn't involved in the conversations that struck those contracts up, but I have an idea of how they were struck up, and it wasn't explained to them properly, right? And I don't think that these people would have not gone through with the deal had it been explained up front and said, "Hey, you got to pay your tax probations. You're going to have some closing costs on your end. Here's what your bottom line. Here's what your check's really going to look like. We're going to pay off any liens on the property, things of that nature." Explaining that to them, just getting them prepped for it so that when we send out numbers, a few days before closing, nobody's looking at it like, what is all of this? I had no idea. I thought Milt was buying this house from me for $50,000. I was walking out with $50,000.
Wow. So it has to be
explanation. It's all those tax probations, which people understand by the time, but even when they go through that contract, his tax probation section means in Kentucky, the tax bill comes out at the end of the year. If it's before that end of the year, 4 months before the end of the year, you're going to be paying me as the buyer credit for January 1 through the closing date. That's going to be debited from your bottom line. That's just you simply paying your portion of taxes. It's not me trying to take money from you, but that's the way the contract reads. You say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And if you explain it to them a month before closing, when they get the settlement statement, they're going to look at that number. They might not remember right away, but when you say, "Hey, remember when we talked about the tax provision? Here's what it is."
It's not a surprise. It's not a kicking teeth.
Right.
It shouldn't be.
That's a little plug for us. One of our technology things is we have a seller net sheet on our website. You can go to our website at limestoneTitle.com. You can go on there, and there's a little section, I believe, that says "Get a Quote," and you can do a seller net sheet where you can plug in a sales price as long as you have the previous year tax bill, which is TVA information. Right? Like that. You can plug in the previous year tax bill. It would plug in our title fees, and you can tell them "Hey, look, these are average title fees. We're kind of right in the middle of the border. You're going to be paying actually somewhere to do this closing." Anything, mortgages. Hey, if you know your mortgage balance, let's plug that in, and it will print you basically a settlement statement that you can show these people while you're going out there. And it's if you have an iPad or something, and it will email it from the website. You can say, "Hey, look, we just went through this. Here's what your check shows them what their check is going to be, how they arrive at the check." You can email it to them and say, "Okay, that's if I bought it for $50,000, here's what it looks like. But if you sold it for $60,000, here's what it looks like." You can plug in agent commissions, right? So you can do that piece and say, "Look, if I listed it at this price with these commissions, this is what your bottom line would be. If I had an investor buy it without agents, take out those agent commissions. Here's what your bottom line would be."
That's nice. That's nice.
It's a really cool tool.
That is a great tool. It's just a great tool.
Yeah, and it makes things easier to know what to expect. And one thing else, one of our sponsors, Spoke Marketing, they kind of have the same beliefs. Running a business shouldn't be hard, so you shouldn't have to be a brand strategist, the actor, the editor as well. So our friends at Spoke Marketing help you look great while doing what you do best. BespokeMarketing.org. Bespoke Marketing Connections, tailor-made.
And so, what are some of the more challenging title issues you have to encounter nowadays?
Well, it's, every deal is different. I think when you're talking about a cutter neighborhood, with a plat map and everything like that, that's generally a pretty easy transaction. You start getting out into the outer counties, things like that, and you have meets and bounds descriptions, and you have properties that have been sold off. And when I say that, means it starts as a big piece of property, and then 30 years ago, Grandpa sold 4 acres to Uncle Joe, and so now the property is this amount, and kind of track it through that can be difficult.
And the deed says like, okay, so where the goat gate was, this one of those oak trees. Yes. The third tree on the right is where Grandpa's land ended and where Uncle Joe's land began.
Yeah.
How do you navigate those
types of situations? I tell people, get yourself a new survey. Spend the money. Nobody wants to do it, but spend the money. If you're going to buy that kind of land, get yourself a new survey. Especially on investment deals, you don't have survey coverage on your title insurance policy. Meaning, if it's an investment property, it's not primary residence. On a primary residence, you can buy an enhanced policy that gives you survey coverage, which is basically coverage against property line disputes. But if you're buying land, if it's investment, anything like that, that coverage is not on there. So if you bought it and then all of a sudden the neighbor comes over and says, hey, no, actually this 600 feet belongs to me, I'm putting a fence up right now. That's not anything a title insurance company is going to defend you for. So I recommend getting a survey. I even tell people, look, if you're going to put up a fence in a neighborhood, get a survey. Because if you don't, you're not going to have any grounds.
There'll be no problems until the fence goes up.
Right.
And it's always happened when you want to put a fence up.
Or I've talked to my neighbor and he's full with it. Well, great.
Right.
When he goes to sell his house and that new buyer comes in and does their own survey and says, hey, I'm buying this house and your fence is on my property by a foot. So before I close, I'd like to have you move that for me. Right. And so they try to save, $400 or $500 on a survey that winds up costing them, I don't know how much it is to move the fence, but I know it's not $400 or $500. Right. So it's just, that would be the issue resolution there. Get yourself a survey. That way you're protected. Everybody's clear when you go to